news. It's time now to review headlines of today's newspapers, and we're going to start with the newspaper of record this day on Saturday. Above the masthead there, NNPC gas suppliers sign 1.29 feed gas supply deals with NLNG. The rider says local Bori, federal government wooing global oil firms with new incentives. American firms eye investment in OML 145. Kachi was speaking earlier about the Renewed Hope agenda and our oil production.
Yes.
So I guess this is some good news there. Under that, we see INEC, over 500,000 Nigerians register online for CVR in 5 days. That is the ongoing voter registration exercise by INEC. And that is a good sign. 500,000 in 5 days, I think it's a good sign. Will it translate to people coming out to vote? That is what we need to know, because as we saw in the by-elections, we had low voter turnout.
Yeah, I was going to actually just, piggyback on what you said with regards to investments in OML 145, the American firm eyeing that investment. The Minister of State for Petroleum, has said that this is a positive direction with regards to President Bola Ahmed Tinubu's goals for our oil and gas sector. However, I would like to point out that a lot of these local indigenous players in the oil and gas sector face a lot of setbacks, with regards to frustrations to their businesses as well, from both on the government side, and on the local side. And I think it's important to continue to support what they do to ensure that they are able to adequately meet up their expectations. Because as we spoke about private investment, oil and gas is not a fully private business. It's part private, it's part government as well. And that private and government sector collaboration is very, very important to ensure that they do what they need to do to meet the goals that need to be met at this time. So I'm really impressed with that.
Yes, under the masthead there, FG Japan intensified talks on $238 million loan for national power grid expansion. The rest of that story is on page 6. Of course, this week we saw The Economist do a report on Nigeria's lack of power and the problems that we have with our transmission there, done by Oil. That was a brilliant report. Under that, you have Tinubu pushes for local arms ammunition production to enhance insurgency fight. The writer says his administration desirous of institutions strengthening, optimistic about renewed confidence in Nigeria's economy. The president there was represented by the vice president who spoke at NDC. Now, the thing about this is it's good, it's brilliant, it's nice to push for local arms or ammunition production. We've seen reports on drones that are being manufactured in Nigeria. Of course, our manufacturing sector is not very strong. However, it seems that in this focus on arms, ammunition, bullets, killing and capturing, we have forgotten that we also need to invest in a non-kinetic approach to fighting insurgency. We have terrorists, we have Boko Haram recruiting boys with food because there is hunger. We have ISWAP setting itself up as some type of quasi-government providing healthcare services because we have a breakdown in our local government structure. When nature abhors a vacuum, as people say. And when the government has created this vacuum, they cannot fight insurgency with bullets alone. And there really needs to be a renewed focus on a non-kinetic approach to fighting this insurgency. Now, I
couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
You wanted to say something?
No.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with you. I feel like when there is so much strife, let me put it that way, with regards to the lack of job opportunities, lack of education, there's so many loopholes, and crime just seems much more juicy, to a lot of these people. I would also say that it is important to talk about the fact that we only just spoke about, us partnering with the U.S. to get in some new weapons within Nigeria, over 300 million, if I'm not mistaken, dollars. And if President Tinubu is pushing for local arms and ammunition production to enhance insurgency fighting, in Nigeria. Again, I have to take it back to the private sector because it's not today. You know, it's already ongoing. Just earlier this month, CNN did a really beautiful story about the two Igbo boys who have this company called Terra Industries based in Abuja, and they deal in robotics. There's several organizations like that, several startup companies that are doing big things and in fact, there are even companies in Nigeria that are developing their own drones to protect themselves, especially within sectors in mining and the like. So I feel like this is something that already happens, maybe not at the federal level at this time because the government is not yet involved. It still goes back to government needs to, we spoke about the rebasing of our economy to include other sectors that are equally doing well. Government not only needs to look at the money that is being generated, but also how are these sectors generating the money that they are generating? How are they doing it? How can they collaborate? How can they get themselves involved? Because we don't need to start from the foundation. It's already happening. We just need further collaborations.
Yeah, so let's move to our lead story of the day on this day. Despite disharmony, PDP leaders seek to calm tension ahead of 2027. The writer there says party governors hold strategic meeting in Zamfara today ahead of national convention. Bodigeorge harps on need to enforce discipline, urges detractors to leave if they can't support progress. Now, the PDP is trying to hold their neck after multiple postponements of their neck. They're planning on holding it soon. The governor of Zamfara, they're hosting his fellow PDP governors ahead of the 2027 elections. And there's disharmony. The silence that is missing there is that there is some sort of disharmony between the minister of the FCT, Nyesom Wike, and the governor of Oyo State, Sheyi Makinde. Now, of course, those two men were very famously part of the G5 governors who were against Atiku's election in 2023, or his candidacy rather, for the office of president. And the G5 seems to now have dwindled down to perhaps only a G2 or a G1. And of course, disharmony in the PDP, as Bodigeorge is asking for enforcement of discipline. I'm going to see how the PDP is going to do that when they have multiple governors who, of course, have endorsed President Tinubu's re-election campaign for 2027. They are allegedly going to have a candidate of their own who's not aligned with their governors. And, of course, they refuse to suspend even those who work openly for the APC.
These are... So, again, when you say, and speaking specifically to, Bodigeorge, the APC chieftain, harping on the need to enforce discipline, urging detractors to leave if they cannot support progress, it's a bit contradictory and hard to comprehend, because who is he talking to? Who is he urging, or who is going to enforce the urge for detractors to leave if they cannot support progress?
Well,
who's going to do it? Because it's glaring. It's like they just put these in the air.
Yes.
Exactly. They just put these statements in the air, assuming that the people, everybody kind of figures it out. But it doesn't work that way. I think PDP has gotten to a point where, especially because we are so close to 2027 and they need to put up a united front as we approach the elections. It's gotten to a time where we have gotten exhausted with these blanket statements of need to enforce discipline. Are we still talking about a need to enforce discipline today? At this time, we've emphasized, tell us something we don't already know, PDP. Otherwise, just don't tell us anything at all.
One thing I would say about this, because, you want to take another newspaper?
Of course, I'll head on to The Nation right after.
Yes, because, one thing I will say about the PDP and their disharmony or their confusion is that when you have a weak opposition in a democracy, by definition, it makes the democracy itself not positive for the people. And you're seeing this not only in Nigeria, because very importantly, Paul Biya of Cameroon, of course, has said that he is going to run for re-election, I think for the 8th time while in his 90s. And one thing that he has been able to successfully do in Cameroon is keep his opposition confused.
I don't know if that's a good thing at this. So
it's not. That's what I'm saying.
That's a good thing.
It's not a good thing. But he has been able to do it, and you see that if you have disunity in the opposition, if you have confusion, if you have people who are there for their own interests rather than the interests of the Nigerian people, then our interests will not be taken into account, because it's actually ridiculous at this point in time where we are just a little bit over midterm into President Tinubu's term in office, that all we are focusing on is 2027, and that those who say they want to challenge him for the betterment of Nigeria and the Nigerian people can't get their act together.
Exactly. It's utterly embarrassing, and we see through these cracks. Okay, let's head into the nation. On a Saturday, by-election results, PDP and others in panic. PDP others panic, and they return to the drawing board ahead of 2027. ADC rep Adbejide predicts collapse of coalition by September. Well, it's a couple of days to September. Will that coalition last through to 2027? Time will tell. Still, with regards to the results, panic returned to the drawing board ahead of 2027. Let's hope PDP can, in fact, figure out this drawing board soon and soon enough. Another story there, FAC distributes record 2 trillion revenue to federal, state, and local governments. Let's take a look at the main story there. The AGF saying, I'm not under any pressure to drop charges against friends of the government, says all cases are treated on merit. How First Bank Oba Tudeko's case was settled. Now, I think why this story, just earlier we spoke about the importance of independent organizations remaining independent. But at the same time, in that independence, let's also try not to seem as though we are cherry picking what we want to deal with and what we don't want to deal with. I think that's a very important. I think this is also a subtle cry for help, if I'm looking at this, because he's saying that, listen, these are friends of the government and he's not under pressure to drop them. Maybe he is actually under pressure to drop them.
I think the Nigerian public will look at the videos of former governor of Kogi State, Yahaya Bello, dancing in his workout outfit, and you look at the utterances, of course, coming from supporters of the president, or how people, also from the opposition, because the ADC has said that they're using the EFCC as a tool. Of course, on the front page there, we see Haski, who is the son-in-law of Atiku Abubakar. So we see that people are saying that they are using this as a tool. Tambuwal, of course, Senator Tambuwal, former governor of Sokoto State, was held last week. So we see the opposition saying that they are using it as a tool. And if it's using it as a stick on one hand for the opposition, then perhaps it's a carrot on the other, meaning that if you are close to the president, you can get away with whatever you want. But before we wrap up here, because the Punch has done an incredible report that's very important. The lead story on the Punch is Utmi, how we breach CBT Center servers for candidates. This is hackers, and the writer there says, compromised operators behind exam fraud. Proprietors Association rejects the generalization. Very importantly there is even a hacker who says that the center operators released the internet protocol address to hackers to log into servers undetected, while mercenaries would write exams for some candidates. This is incredibly we've been talking about JAM and Utmi. We've one scandal after another, misplaced reports, hacking. This report, I think everyone should read. It is on page 4 of the Saturday Punch, and it is absolutely damning about what our system has currently brought itself to.
I'm telling you now, in the wake of we were speaking about that RMAFC, talking about increasing the salaries of Nigerian leaders, I would just like to point out that the lead story on the Saturday Tribune says workers, pensioners will demand living wages, and that is from the Southwest Pensioners. Says union will not take 250,000 naira as minimum wage. If politicians jack up their pay, they better be jacking up the pay of everybody else at this point in time. We don't want to pay rise. That's what they're saying.
I want one too, actually. Since we're on the topic.
Since we're on the topic, we might as well all just get one. Well, that brings us to the end of the morning show today. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Kachi Ofia.
Well, I'm Adesua Giwa Osage from our entire team here in Lagos, Nigeria. Enjoy the rest of your morning and, of course, the rest of your day.